Subscribe to MDR. Like for more.
Tak Hai Jaan was the last film by the legendary Indian filmmaker Yash Chopra. At the time it released, people's opinion of the film was rooted in the actual tragedy related to it. But years later, it makes sense to go back to the film and examine whether it holds up. Was it even any good to begin with? Or does its classical themes grounded in ancient Indian literature, specifically of Kalidasa's, make it timeless? Let's find out. Tak Hai Jaan is a film about a love triangle between the three characters of Summer, Meera and Akira. The story of the film revolves around the lives of the three and spans over a decade in the process of finding out how will their love stories conclude. Over the film's 3-hour runtime, Tak Hai Jaan becomes much more than just a story about a love triangle. It becomes about personal ambitions, serving one's duty and fulfilling one's desires. And the film connects them in clever ways, branching out to themes of divine interventions in the lives of people by gods, and of foreshadowing events through subtle hints and playing with the idea of memories, like that of the ancient classical play Attribution-NoDerivs by Kalidasa. Let's break this down one by one. Summer, a hardworking immigrant in London, falls in love with a rich, innocent and naive Meera. Through their youthful love, Meera finds herself to be morally corrupt as she betrays her engagement with another man, and being as devoted to God as she is, she finds herself in a battle between her devotion to gods, which is her duty, and her love, which is her desire. With a sense of doom lurking over her shoulders all the time, she does end up witnessing Summer crash into a car, and ends up prophesying her love story's own demise through a deal with the gods as she promises to leave Summer if he survives the ordeal. And she actually does it. They are separated. On the other hand, in the play Attribution-NoDerivs, Shakuntala, an innocent and moral character, falls in love with the dutiful king of Hastinapur, who is Dushanta. And in a similar turn of events, the two who have fallen in love are so lost that they abandon their duties for their desires, much like Summer and Meera. Then, one day, a sage comes to the hermitage where Shakuntala lives, and he notices that Shakuntala is lost in the love of someone. He then curses Shakuntala that her lover's memory will fail to recognize her, and as such, they are separated. While it is a debated issue whether the separation of the couple is because of the curse or through Dushanta's voluntary decision, this is something that Tak Hai Jaan plays upon. Instead of leaving us to debate the nature of the couple's split, the film has both types of separations in the film, voluntary and involuntary. The first is due to Summer's own decision, when he goes back to India and serves in the army after Meera says that she cannot be with him. And the second is when he has an accident 10 years later that is foreshadowed early on in the film, and thus ends up forgetting his recently made memories with Akira because of retrograde amnesia. If we were to look at these events from the lens of duty and desire, you can see that Summer leaves his desire to go for his duty first, then ends up closing in on desire again, and only then does he go far from it before finding a balance between both in the climax. Like this, there are many things in Tak Hai Jaan that can be connected to ancient classical literature, from its archetypal idea of romance to the film's rather strange and peculiar mistakes, some of which are even questionable. However, the one thing that really stands out to me is how conflicting the film is, in every sense of its existence. I say this because the film is rather bland in its first half, I will not lie to you. But it is very interesting in the second, I will not lie to you. There isn't much chemistry between any of the characters in the first half, I will not lie to you, and then suddenly in the second it can bring you to tears. I will not lie to you. Now this may be because of the film's suspenseful and tragic nature through much of its length in the second half, and otherwise mostly merry and happy in the first, but I still find this contrast to be very starking. For me, this divides Tak Hai Jaan into two films, like 1.5 hours, literally. It is also very strangely edited, not talking about the film's length here, which it is a long film for sure, but it doesn't feel like such a connected narrative, even though if you look at it from a broader lens, it all makes sense. And I think this flaw of the film doesn't come from its overall narrative, but in the minor things, like scenes in the film that seem to be cut before the required expression or after it has died down. Unnecessary zoom-ins and zoom-outs which ruin the film's otherwise slow and peaceful camera movements that really gives the film a, I would like to say this, serene feeling. Most of all, the film's greyish look that makes Tak Hai Jaan feel rather inactive and colourless loses the liveliness and vibrancy of other grand Bollywood romances. The chemistry between Shah Rukh Khan and Katrina Kaif misses all the points until the second half of the film, when the character of Meera has to come back into Summer's life and pretend like they've been in a relationship for 10 years, even though they had been separated for all that time. After that, Katrina Kaif takes the ball and bats it out of the stadium, and SRK, as always, wins it with his performance. And as for Anushka Sharma, her character in the film doesn't shine as much as the others, but she has still done her job well. This is also the third film that A.R. Rahman and SRK had teamed up for. The first, Dil Se, was not a box office hit, but its music nonetheless is still considered as one of the best SRK hits. And the second as well, Swadesh, was not a box office hit, but its music is still heard by NRIs whenever they wish to come back to India. And then there's Tak Hai Jaan. From Saas to Heer to my personal favorite Challa are absolute classics. But one song that is mostly forgotten by people is the end credits song that is titled after the film's name. Go listen to it if you haven't, it's really beautiful. Quite like the film's cinematography, which is just amazing in parts. But its inconsistency and its colorlessness does add to the list of cons more than pros. I am out of words to conclude this video without mentioning that I do like Tak Hai Jaan, many of its aspects, but its flaws do cast a shadow on the legacy of the film over time, and sadly does affect my liking of Tak Hai Jaan as a film. However, Tak Hai Jaan's use of classic Indian literature themes rooted in its screenplay and the film's evergreen soundtrack does make me confident enough to say that if you like romance films, especially Bollywood romance films, Tak Hai Jaan is one timeless film to check out, even after all these years. Thank you for watching.